Hi there. Today we're starting work on a job that came in a short while ago and it's quite a special job, although looking at it you might say, what's special about E-Type parts? Well, let's talk about E-Types. They made over 72,000 E-Types from 1961 to 1975. When they came out they were quite a revolutionary car. They had independent front and rear suspension, rack and pinion steering. It had a 3.8 litre triple carb engine, and that was a 150 mile an hour car back in 1961. It would also do 0 to 60 in sub 7 seconds. Interesting is just how early a car these are off. These are off chassis number 19, so it's in the first 20 of any of the E-Type production cars. The really early cars were different to all the rest, and they're known as the flat floor cars. And not only were these E-Types technically advanced, they were such a good looking car. Even Enzo Ferrari described them as the most beautiful car ever made. So let's get on and get these restored back to their former glory. The first thing we've got to do with all of these parts is remove all of the old plating so that they're back to the bare metal, and then we can do something with them. Here these brass trims are going into the stripper, and we're going to pass a current through them and actually reverse the plating process. These bumpers are now going into a tank of hydrochloric acid to dissolve the rust off of the backs of them. Now these trims are done, they're back to the bare brass. Just checking these bumpers, no, they're still rusty, we'll have to leave them in. After the rust was removed, they were swirled, and now we're going into the stripper. You can see it fizzing away there, ready to come out. And there the bumpers have been stripped and derusted, and the brass is back to bare metal, so we can get on with the job. Now we're in the polishing shop, where we're going to polish all of these parts up until they're a mirror finish. The first operation is to remove all of the corrosion marks. We call this cutting out or bottoming out. We've got to polish to the bottom of all of the marks and remove them in one go. Now you can't remove metal without making a few sparks. It takes a lot of skill to be able to do it without causing any damage. Now we've changed the belt, and all we're going to do now is go through progressively finer abrasives to remove the marks that we put in when we did the first polishing operation. It's getting finer and finer. You can see that the shine on the bumper is starting to build up just by going through finer abrasives. If you like what we do, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and if you hit the notification bell, you'll be informed when we release a new video. Now we're going to come back to that one later. Now we're cutting out the brass, so any corrosion is going to be removed in this first polishing operation. These E-Type headlamp rims are one of the most dangerous items that was ever invented and put on a car. They move in so many different directions,
and it's very, very easy to wrap them around the machine and take your hand off in the process. There we go. Now we're mopping this up. This is a final mop. Brass is much softer and quicker to work with than steel. Now what we're going to do is get the shine on the steel. Now this is done with a hard sisal brush. Now one thing that's difficult to see is just how much weight is being applied to this bumper. In order to brush it up, you've got to really lean on it. Now you can see how the shine's really starting to come together. Unfortunately on this bumper, as it turns out, this last polishing operation revealed that the steel wasn't polishing up well enough to enable us to do a mirror finish. So this one's going to have to be copper plated. Now here are those bumpers that need coppering in the plating shop. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to wire them up onto copper wires. This is so that we can pass a current through them so that the copper will form onto the bumpers. If you think about copper plating, doing in electroplating what a high build primer does in paint, you're about right. So into a soapy cleaner, remember the gloves, and it's time for just a thorough wiping down. We've got to make sure that these are absolutely perfectly clean. Any paint, dirt, grease, anything will stop it from coming out how we want it. Now in this cleaner we pass an electric current through to remove any oxides from the surface and make the surface what we call active so that it will accept the plating. If we were to not activate the surface, it would be prone to peel off. Now we're going through this multiple rinse system. We're going from dirty water into clean water, then a dip into a dilute acid to remove any soap. And what we're going into here is a cyanide based solution that's going to put a coat of copper onto this bumper. The reason that we can't go straight into the copper solution we're actually going to use for building up is because it's very acidic and it won't plate directly onto steel. So this is sort of a barrier coat that enables us to plate it with acid copper. Now we're going through this rinse system again, just as we did before. And then into the copper tank. Now it's going to cook away in here for at least a couple of hours to put a nice deposit on. There we are, it's coming out. It should look pretty good at this stage, nice and shiny. Ready for more polishing.
Now we're back in the polishing shop again. We're going to go over this copper plating first of all with a very fine abrasive. The reason to do that is if there's any little imperfections and the copper seems to find them and actually sort of open them out a bit, we want to get rid of those because we can't mop it up with those imperfections in it because you end up with drag marks across the bumper. So just got to carefully go over every part of the bumper, check in for marks as we go. Now we can change to a brush. This is just going to shine it up and get it close to being finished.
There we go, nearly complete with the brushing stage. Although this looks very shiny, it's still not quite good enough to plate. So here's on with a soft mop. Now we need to go all over it again and give it that final shine. It's all got to be finished off in one direction, and that way we can see that it's absolutely spot on. And there we go, all finished and ready for plating. Now the bumpers are back in the plating shop, all laid out, ready to be wired up. There's all the small items that go with this set as well. So all these parts have now got to be wired up onto copper wires so we can pass an electric current through them. Everything has to be wired up in specific ways. If you don't wire it up correctly, it won't come out right. Every part of this job is labour intensive, even including the wiring, and everything gets a good wipe down. Now this is a cleaner for removing the oxides from the surface and leaving it active so that it will plate properly without any peeling. And it's through the rinse system, through the dilute acid, rinse one final time, and it's into the nickel tank. Now this is the all important layer when it comes to chrome plating, because it's the nickel that gives it all the good looks and the weather protection as well. While this is cooking away, we'll put all the small bits in. Now these are ready to come out first because they're smaller. So lots and lots of small bits. Now we're going to chrome all the small parts while we get the bumper out ready for chroming. It only gets chromed for between 1 and 5 minutes depending on the size of the parts. So going through all the swivel system again, just like before we went in. And into the chrome tank. The chrome is an extremely thin coating. It's not normally thicker than 200 thousandths of an inch. The only reason that it's on there is to stop the nickel from tarnishing. It does change the colour to a chrome colour, but it's basically all there so that you don't have to polish nickel parts every week. One final rinse. And there we go, a finished bumper. We've just got to wait for the water to dry. Now all the water's dried off the parts, we need to unwire them all, inspect them and make sure everything's alright for the customer. Takes quite a while even just to unwire them, so then it's all got to be inspected. We wipe everything down so that we can see if there's any defects. When you've got a job with quite a few parts like this,
You have to be very meticulous how you wipe it down, check it off against the list, make sure we've got everything that's part of the job. This E-Type job's all complete now. Considering it was nearly 60 years old and in a bit of a state, it's come up fantastic. Customer's going to be really happy, and it's nice to have been working on parts from such a rare car.